Sabrina, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. We're really excited. But I guess just quickly, in 30 to 60 seconds, could you explain what it is that you do?
Yeah, so my name is Sabrina Caballero, and my company is Thriftheads Arizona. I run a reselling e-commerce business. I focus mostly on selling clothes, things like jackets and t-shirts, shoes, etc. And I'm slowly expanding into homeware right now. I mainly sell through Depop, Instagram, and Shopify, but I'm slowly kind of transitioning my items there. And I've also recently opened a small in-person space where people can come and shop.
Nice. Nice. Very cool. Well, that is helpful. But before we get into the serious questions, we usually like to kick things off with some rapid fire, get things moving. So first one is, what is your favorite movie or movie you've watched the most?
I would say it is Twilight. I know
There's,
Twilight is like known to be really cringy to some people, but I love the cringe. I think it's so good. And I do watch a lot of war movies, not so much anymore, just because I'm trying to keep my mindset out of that. But but I do like war movies like 1917 or Saving Private Ryan. I don't know if you guys are familiar.
yes, yes. I'm trying to remember with Twilight, wasn't there like you had to choose a team within Twilight, like between the two characters? Or am I
Yeah.
totally Yeah, so do you have the team?
Okay, so back then I would say it was Edward, but rewatching it now as an adult, I'm like, Bella should have picked Jacob because he's just like awesome.
I agree. I also agree. I honestly, I had that exact same take. Like as a teenager, you're like, oh, Edward, the moody vampire. But then as an adult, you're like, he needs to work on himself. Like,
no, it's crazy. Like,
Yeah. Well, how you're describing it, I would still be Team Edward, but what is your favorite book?
my favorite book, I would say, I think it's been a while since I've read it, but it's called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by E. Harv Eker.
Okay. That's a good one. Do you have a favorite? I don't know if you're a podcast person, but do you have a favorite podcast you like to listen to?
I love Lewis House. I don't know if you guys are familiar with House. The School of Greatness, that's what it's called.
Oh, okay. Yes, I have. I've seen like the YouTube clips of him. Okay. When you have to lock in and get some work done, do you have like a process that you do to really get in the zone?
Uh,
Music or like a certain space?
yeah, I would say, I mean, audiobooks are a big one, or meditation music. I don't have like a specific one. It's just kind of whatever I'm like in the mood in. Honestly, I really like the rain sounds.
Oh yeah.
Which is like kind of goofy, but it helps. And I do go into this room a lot because it's just very quiet, and going to the gym, that helps me. Typically in the mornings. It's really actually the morning routine, like that kind of sets my day, I've realized.
Yes.
So,
And what about when you need to like lock out, where you're like, I've been working too much, and you take my mind off things? Do you like have any hobbies or anything you like to do?
I would say when I first started like my journey, I didn't know how to lock out, but now I've gotten way better. And it's actually, I heard someone say, what was it? I heard someone say, at your full-time job, you like lock out. You know what I mean? Like you're off the clock. So
Yeah.
like I'm gonna do the same thing, because I don't want to like overwork myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Gotcha. No, that's good. Okay, well, that's kind of the first section. Now we can actually get into it. But so first of all, where did you grow up? And do you have any entrepreneurs in your family that kind of inspired you?
I was born here in Arizona, and I did live in Mexico till I was about 4 years old. Uh, Spanish was my first language, and growing up, entrepreneurship was around me, but I don't think I fully understood or grasped it at the time, I guess you can say. And my parents both worked full-time jobs, but business was definitely in the background. So my dad, who is from Mexico, he ran a variety of businesses. He DJ'd, he owned a hardware store. He flipped houses here in the US, and he's now currently managing our family's mango farm.
Okay.
So business was really all he knew growing up, and he only spoke Spanish. So he did visit the US prior to meeting my mom, but he was just like, what I'm trying to get at is Mexico was his home, so
Yes.
he's extremely sharp, really good with numbers, very driven. And my mom, she worked as a medical assistant, but she was, she also tried a few business ventures of her own. She started a baby boutique storefront, and she sold on eBay. I still remember opening day, I was about 11 or 12, and I definitely think that, or seeing that, left an impression on me, kind of unconsciously. Um, and my parents, when they moved to the United States, they left behind, my dad's businesses and the language and pretty much the lifestyle. They had built for me and my siblings to have more opportunity here in the US. And as a kid, you don't really understand that, what that costs, leaving behind, your home. And it wasn't until later in life where I started working long hours myself, or long days, and I just really understood that exhaustion and sacrifice they carried. So I think that really, or I know that really shaped how I view work and independence, and
Yeah.
why building something, mattered.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like both your parents were kind of, entrepreneurial and they were starting things. So that's helpful. So you'd mentioned Thrift Heads. So I know it's been a few years since you started it, but what was kind of like the inception of it? Like, where did you get the first idea that made you want to do this and pursue it as a business?
So, okay. I mean, to kind of give you some context, uh, I think it would be important to know like my career background. I I had a lot of jobs growing up, so uh, there's a lot to unpack. Okay, so I started working right when I was 16. My first job was at a pizza shop, and I remember being so excited to make my own money, not have to ask my parents for 20 bucks, when I wanted to go out. And uh, after that pizza shop, I started working at another pizza shop. And later, my junior and senior year of high school, I found an after school program. So I started working with kindergartners up to 12-year-olds. And I loved it. I enjoy teaching. I loved connecting with the kids. And after a while, I thought maybe I wanted to be a teacher. So after high school, I enrolled in community college. I ended up just changing my major so many times because I just wasn't aligning with teaching. I did my service learning. I got more of a feel for, uh, what it was like to teach. And I just didn't, I wasn't very happy. So I ended up just dropping out before finishing my associate's degree. And at that time, I was about 19 or 20. So I was kind of at a point where, okay, I'm ready to branch out. I dropped out of college. So my parents were like, okay, well, I guess you don't need us anymore. We're going to leave. We're going to go back to Mexico and kind of rebuild our path. Your siblings are gone. So, they didn't just leave. They were gracious enough to buy me a car, and I'm sure they would have stayed, if I wanted to stay home, but that wasn't the case. So, it was really my choice to move out. But that meant that I had to navigate life on my own. So, you know, it was now my responsibility to take care of my car and myself, my health, groceries, basic necessities. And I found a room with a couple of roommates. So I found another job at a daycare. And really, this is like where everything kind of changed. I was offered $11 an hour, and I thought this was a lot of money at the time. Okay, I was like so naive. It was Monday through Friday. I worked 40 hours a week, and I did work with infants to 12-year-olds, and every day in my life, just to kind of paint you a picture, was like 25 screaming toddlers. And so we're going to get a little deep here, but nowhere near enough pay to compensate for the physical exhaustion, the emotional weight of it, biting, pinching, sick kids, angry parents, angry bosses, dealing with cops and 911, just incidents that I cannot get into, but you get the idea. So
Yes.
This sounds like training for like a boot camp for management. Like you should be able to manage a whole team no problem after this.
Taylor, it was like signing up for the army. I'm just kidding. It wasn't that horrible, but these were the days that I didn't have a backbone. So so I would go in on my days off and just to catch up on work. I have a lot of stories about working there, but really there's one story that kind of just changed everything, So, or I should say it's more of an experience. It was the middle of winter. I had already been working like over a year there, and I didn't have a heater in my car or AC, no windows. It had rained the night before, so when I sat down, my pants just soaked up. And so, my brakes didn't work. No car insurance. Okay. I was just kind of playing like catch up every week with my money, and I just had no safety net. I simply just couldn't afford my lifestyle, And I didn't ask for help either, because I just kind of carried this shame with me, I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But anyways, later that day, the kids had spaghetti, and anyone who's ever watched toddlers eat spaghetti,
Yeah, that's a crazy idea to serve spaghetti. I don't know who made that decision.
Yeah, and so, noodles and sauce just everywhere, where they shouldn't be. And by the time the kids were done eating, I was covered in it too. And so I'm just like standing there, in my shirt, it's all stained red and wet and noodles in my hair. And I was trapped in a room with not just screaming kids, but like overwhelmed and exhausted teachers who were barely, handling it, themselves, like they couldn't handle it. But or holding it together. They weren't holding it together themselves. But anyways, I was on my knees, scrubbing the tables, scrubbing the floors, and like my life depended on it, which it did. And in that moment, something snapped. I remember stopping mid-scrub and just looking around the room, the mess, the screaming, everything around me. Like, this wasn't just a bad day. This was my life. This is what I was waking up to every morning. And it was kind of the first time that I admitted how angry I was. And not at the kids, not at the job, but at myself for believing that, you know, this is all I deserved. And, you know, that's when I just had to find another way, or, you know, it's really what ultimately, I guess it was kind of pushing me to start something, like building something of my own, even though I didn't know what that would look like.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say that's really interesting. I was also like on the edge of my seat. That was a very good story. The way you're telling it, I wasn't, when you said you snapped, I was like, oh, is this turning into a true crime podcast? But fortunately, you had a motivating and inspiring.
Yeah. These were the 9/11 calls that you said you couldn't talk about. The foreshadow. Okay, well, so that all makes sense why you wanted to start a business. That's a very good origin story. But I guess what made you decide that going into like starting the business that you did? Because that's a tough. I think a lot of people can relate to like wanting to build something of their own. But I think the next question is like, okay, what the hell do I do? So how did you sort of narrow in on what it was that you wanted to start building?
So give me a second, I'm thinking.
Right.
So it was started out with me searching for a way out. And so that meant, you know, just researching, like watching videos, watching or listening to audiobooks. And eventually I came across Gary Vaynerchuk, and, you know, he inspired me to just go for it. Don't think about it too much. And he's known for flipping baseball cards or going to garage sales and flipping whatever he finds. So, you know, I started trying out ideas, and I kind of just was failing quietly, you can say. And I had all sorts of ideas. I wanted to do like a coffee truck or a sandwich shop, and these just required too much money, so it just didn't work out. And I actually did start a couple of podcasts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, so both of the podcasts I started at completely different times, but the first one, it was called The Weekend Girls, and it was with me and one of my friends, my friend Rachel. And that one was more kind of just like, I wanted to try it out and just kind of, you know, see what I could do. And it was a pretty cool process because we actually like made a few bucks off of the podcast. So, you know, that was cool. But
so when maybe that's kind of interesting actually. So that's like your first starting point. So obviously you've got to figure out how editing works. I don't know how much you were into video editing, how like you got to get mics and all this stuff. It sounds like maybe you had sponsors or you did something with it to get some revenue. Like, could you maybe just describe a little bit how you got that off the ground?
Well, honestly, that wasn't like, I was mostly just doing that for fun. I mean, I did take it seriously, but I don't even know how I did that. Honestly, I look back and I'm like, how did I even do that? I don't know if it was just so natural to me, I think. Just because as a kid, I was always creating. I was always alone. And, you know, I had my own room growing up, and I just kind of built this rich inner world where creativity lived, you can say. And I think it was natural, but that really wasn't like the turning point for me, you know? That wasn't how I found that idea for thrifting, you know? So I did leave my daycare job, and I ended up working at a retail store in the e-commerce department. And it was a seasonal position, so I knew I couldn't, I had to find something else. But I ended up just kind of correlating my experience with that and how Gary Vaynerchuk would flip things. And my first time thrifting, my friend took me to a Buffalo exchange, and I kind of just correlated all of that together. And I was like, okay, I found a few items to thrift, and I reposted them. I tried eBay, didn't care for it. I found that it was just too complicated at the time, and I kept getting scammed. I tried being an Amazon seller.
I used to work for eBay on the corporate side, and they used to try to get us to be sellers sometimes or buyers. I always found it so hard. I was and people would always ask me questions. I'm like, I'm not support. I have no idea. Every time I found it complicated as well.
Okay, good. I'm not the only one. I thought there was something up with it, but I also tried being an Amazon seller. My account just kept getting flagged and restricted. So I just kind of kept failing. But, eventually I came across Shopify, and that's when I launched on October 3rd of 2020. And I ended up going back to my daycare job. No college degree, no formal training in business, but something about it just felt different. So yeah, that's really kind of the pivot of how I found.
It sounds like you timed it perfectly before COVID and everyone started doing online stuff. October 2020, or wait, would it be 2019? I'm thinking, when was COVID now? Was it February? Okay, so I guess it's maybe later in the year, but you still timed it fairly well, I think.
Oh yeah, but it's funny that you mentioned that, because since I didn't want to go back to my daycare job and I was at that seasonal position, I was looking or interviewing for other jobs, and one of the ladies that I interviewed was like, why would you launch during COVID? That is such a dumb idea. I was like,
oh really? So this wasn't obvious at the time. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So when you first launched then, so it sounds like you went to thrift stores, you picked out some pieces, and then you went to go resell them. You tried on eBay, that didn't really work. Then you ended up going on Shopify. So is that when you set up Thriftheads on Shopify?
Yeah. So I kind of have this habit of going back and forth a lot, which is something that I'm working on to not do that. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because looking at it now, I didn't realize I was doing any of this. I wasn't giving myself credit for operating a business. I think I was just kind of in survival mode the whole time, just looking, to solve problems. So yeah. I don't know
yeah. So when you launched your website on Shopify and you picked up a few pieces, presumably you listed them on your website. It's one thing to list it and have a great idea, a great website, all that stuff. But then how are you actually getting people to look at your website and purchase the items you have listed there? What was the process to getting your first sale?
Yeah. So to kind of give you an image of what I was responsible for, it meant having sourcing strategies and understanding first the behind part of it, because I didn't just go on Shopify and just upload. I didn't know how to navigate through Shopify. So I had to understand, managing inventory turnover and pricing in a way that kept cash flowing, and understanding cost of goods sold and pricing based on margin targets, and kind of just understanding the operation behind it first, and you know, like product inventory and order fulfillment, because I had to figure that out first too, you know, like shipping costs and all of that. I paid, well, I'm trying to like figure out how exactly I did that. I mean, I just kind of like started posting on Instagram too, you know, I
Yeah.
just did that.
And,
And
and
then
so and so when you're figuring all this stuff out on the background, which all makes sense, but when you posted on Instagram too, like what were you like posting your items on, like say Facebook groups for, you know, buying vintage clothing, or were you like running Facebook ads or anything like that to actually get eyes on your product?
I didn't know about, well, I mean, I knew about ads, but like I didn't really clock it yet. I would say a big thing for me was I knew that I had to start uh, like marketing. So I started to take on more of a leadership role, and I had a small team that helped me, like my models and my photographers. Um, you know, they were able to help me bring my brand to life in a visual way. So that's really like the main thing. And then I found like another love for that, you know, for that side of it. Uh, so that's really what I just started doing. I did find some Facebook groups. I started posting on Facebook groups and Marketplace. I found Depop. I love Depop. That's where I mainly sell now. Um, so yeah, just Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah. And is this just like you posted enough times with, like, it sounds like you got models and high quality photos and things like that. And then by just putting out content, people, I guess, got to your website or your Depop profile, and then they started to purchase clothes. So your focus was, instead of outreach, it was just putting out high level content.
Yeah, so I wasn't focused too much on, well, actually that's a lie. I was focused on like perfecting a photo, and I mean that's just kind of like a side note, but I like the more that I posted, the more that I felt I was getting recognized, because I started getting uh like people reaching out to me. So I had a few photographers reach out to me and they wanted to collaborate. And what else? I had access to like photo shoot studios. I was mentioned on websites, like, you know, community websites and stuff. So it's really, I mean, it's really, yeah, just posting kind of what I felt I needed to post. You know, I didn't really know about like logistics and like marketing and stuff yet. So
It sounds like a common theme here is you're just sort of doing things that you are enjoying yourself, or kind of fits with your personality or fun. Like you mentioned the podcast, you started that, you got a little bit of traction. Before you were talking about just all these different ideas you had and things you tried. And it sounds like this is just another one. Like it maybe didn't start off with all this like perfect business plan with like, here's the margins and all, here's how I'm going to make money. It was more like, I'm enjoying making photos. You're posting it because you enjoy it. People are noticing the quality level, and that sort of creates some traction. Is that like a fair summary, or do you disagree maybe with that take?
no, I think that's very valid. I think that I need to stop saying I think, because I know that everything that you're saying is very valid. It's almost like easier when you don't really think about it. Because, I mean, the way I think about it is I try to keep a childlike mindset, you know, because children, they kind of just do it, they do what they feel. And that's when like the best work kind of comes out. I mean, you want to balance creativity with structure, you know, if you're being serious about it, but for the most part, yeah, just keeping that like childlike mindset when creating and just kind of going for it.
Do you think you would have been able to keep it going if you didn't have that? Because it sounds like that's sort of driving what you're doing is you might have found another business, maybe I'm wrong again, but it's just like, if it was just about the money, you might not have been able to actually build the business in the way that it stands out. Like, are you seeing it kind of like as both sides are needed? Like, you need something that has margins that you can make them work for a business, but also like you have to be like wanting to get up every morning and be excited to work on it.
I am not excited every day.
Okay.
To be completely honest, I would say no, you don't need like the mindset that I was telling you about to operate a business. But I would say sometimes, having a business and, operating, like the hard things about it can just be really heavy, and I feel that's why some people kind of give up, because it's just so difficult and challenging. And I think it's just every job, there's things that you're not going to like about it. But one of my favorite things about my job is the photographing and the creating, and it is finding a balance. But I wouldn't say it's like what is that quote, like end all be all or whatever, to have that.
Yeah, is there anything that you found that worked really well for you to get through that sort of time where you're losing motivation? Because I think this is another thing people often face, is they get really excited about the idea, maybe it gets going, and then they just sort of like lose interest in it. Like, you've kept with it. Like, how did you manage that sort of difficulty?
I would say, well, getting motivated every day, it's definitely challenging, but I really thought, I don't know where I heard this, but I heard it from somewhere, and it was, if you can show up every day at your full-time job, that's essentially someone else's dream. Imagine what you could do or build if you show up for your own. And that is really just, that stuck with me. There's just some things that you hear and it just kind of follows you. And I heard that at the right time, right place. And it just shifted how I saw things. I'm like, yeah, I need to put energy, the same amount of energy that I put into my job, into myself,
Yeah. So what did that first year look like then for you? So you launched the website on Shopify, you start posting on Depop. Were you immediately, making money and enough money to support yourself? Was it a little bit, or your expenses with the photo shoots offsetting any revenue? Like, what was that first year like after you launched?
So the first year, I had mentioned that I was taking more. It's a lot. It's like, it's a lot. It's very heavy. And I definitely see why businesses fail in the first year. I don't remember how much it is. It's like 20%. I don't know. But even in 5 years, 50% of businesses. Yeah. And I mean, the first time that I launched, like the day of, I made like 5 sales. But to me, that was like, hell yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I made 5 sales. People believe in me. And I mean, I was still working my full-time job. So what that looked like, I feel that there's this belief that you can get rich quickly. And I just don't like that, because I fell for that. And that's not, well, I think some people can get lucky and like do it, but the first year was really just kind of understanding first how to balance my job with what I was doing. And I was making sales, but it wasn't, like life changing. It was just more of, okay, like I need to balance out my job with what I'm doing now and kind of just shift my energy. So that was like my first year.
Yes. And so 5 sales when you launched, I mean, that's really good to get that volume. But how did you how did you know what clothes to pick up? Because the basis of your model is essentially like, to make money, you have to sell the item for more than you purchased it for. So what was that like intuition that drove that process? Like, how did you have confidence that like, okay, this thing I see, I think I can sell it for more?
It was definitely, I mean, it's been a process to get to how I source now, but sourcing my clothes in the beginning, I did it just by heart, honestly. Like, I was just so like, I was just like, so I don't want to say desperate, but I was kind of like desperate, you know, to get out. So I just kind of did it. And then I found that some pieces just weren't selling. So I was like, okay, maybe it's like I need to do some research. And I was already naturally drawn to clothes, so that wasn't really an issue. But you know, I just kind of researched. I was on Pinterest, and I actually started to see what people were posting. Like, I started to be more observant of what people were posting and wearing, or I would go to like I would go shopping, and I would just kind of like look, you know, and just that's really kind of how I started to get more of a feel for what to pick out.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like your interest in it allowed you to develop like intuition towards like, you know, what is an item that's going to sell. And we actually had a previous guest who their business is exclusively same thing, reselling products, but it's all like video games and vintage figurines and things like that. And it's the same thing. The founder started it based on his interest, so he sort of had like an intuition on the market, and then he could sell and resell. So I think that's really interesting that like basically your interest has developed a knowledge that, you know, not everyone has, and you're able to capitalize on it.
And I also was looking at other resellers. Like, I was seeing what they were posting, successful ones.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Okay. So that was a little bit more like deliberate research outside of just say like, you know, going to a clothes store and looking at clothes. Yeah. Gotcha. So, okay, so that makes sense of how you started it. And I know you had mentioned that you started to branch into doing in-person pop-ups, aside from just doing e-commerce. So what kind of gave you that idea that that was something that you wanted to try and you thought that it could grow your business?
so the very first pop-up that I did was, I don't know if you're familiar with downtown Gilbert, but here in Arizona, but it's just this kind of this strip of restaurants. And I was driving through there, and I saw a sign that said looking for vendors. And immediately I was like, oh, opportunity. So I got out of my car, I parked, whatever, and I talked to the guy there, and he was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like $50 to set up. And I was like, okay, but he gave it to me for free. So I did that, and I was told that there was gonna be other vendors, and it ended up just being me. Well, I had my friend that, you know, was awesome, and she came with me. So we got up early in the morning, like 5 a.m., and started setting up and thinking that there was going to be other vendors. And this was definitely kind of like scary for me because, I mean, it was new. I was the only one there. And uh, it went well, though. I made a few sales, and it was mostly about the experience, too. I realized that I was doing a lot of things that were making me kind of uncomfortable, but I felt more motivated to do it. Like, oh, you know, like I can do anything, you know, I can do what I'm scared of. But then I was also invited to do other pop-ups in different places. So yeah, I mean, I don't really care for pop-ups anymore though, because it's just a lot of work to be, you know, moving stuff around, clothes around. So I don't really do them as often anymore.
Yeah. Yes. But okay, so that first time, and I guess one thing I'm thinking about too is like, where were you storing all this inventory like when you're running the business?
I was storing it. So I had a few roommates and we had a house and I was storing it in the garage. But then I started storing them in a storage unit.
Okay. Okay. So you've got, yeah. So obviously you've had enough items that like you needed the extra storage unit. So, and as the business grew, did you start to like form relationships with stores for you to like purchase items? Like obviously you'd be a high volume buyer by the sounds of it. So is that something that like you were able to get some like, I don't know, an improved buying process just by the fact that like you're purchasing all these items to then resell?
I would say, well, in the beginning, you know, I like sourcing the clothes. I think definitely if I didn't care for doing that, I'd probably work with a wholesaler, which I have. But I just find it to be easier to source it myself. And uh, I have, I've also received donations. I received this huge donation from a church, and it was like bags, like so many bags. It just filled up my whole car and my trunk and everything. So I've gotten really lucky in that area, which is something that I do want to point out. I've noticed that when you follow like your intuition and when you do something that like you just feel like I have to do this, like people will notice, you know, and like want to like I guess take care of you in a way, you know, like because they believe in you. So that that started happening a lot. I started receiving a lot of clothes because people just, you know, they just believe in you and it's their way of saying that they support you. And I mean, I have found some like wholesalers in California, not just Arizona. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's kind of everywhere. I'm open to receiving from wherever.
And do you find, because like I feel like thrifting is like the exact opposite of fast fashion and like keeping up with like current trends kind of thing. So do you like, is that kind of the case you find is like thrifting, there's so much more like uniqueness to it and it's not just going with like what's hot right now? Or do you find like you have to balance that when you're looking at inventory?
I would say that my personality, I love to thrift because it's just this one big treasure hunt, and I know that not a lot of people like to thrift. But I just, I mean, what was your question?
When you're looking at the inventory, like kind of from a thrifting perspective, like, are you trying to kind of like look at what trends are kind of thing? Or is it kind of like, no, just like those unique items? Cause like one of my good friends has gotten me into thrifting and I find like, it's like more like the unique items that you're finding, not just like, oh, that's really in trend right now kind of thing. So are you kind of looking at it from both ends? Like, are you trying to kind of keep up with trends or are you just kind of going for those like unique items that are more like, either staples or something like quirky or something like that?
Starting out, it was definitely because I had said I was doing it all by heart. I do kind of want a mix of both because at the same time, I'm really big on personal style. So it would just kind of make sense for me to kind of put my personal style or like feel to it, but at the same time, I do want to purchase things, I guess, a little bit more intentionally, so that people, because I mean, I don't know. I'm mostly just kind of, I don't really like to follow trends. Yeah. That's really the thing about it, but yeah. I'm trying.
Yeah. Well, I think that again, that's what like I'm not like super into, but yeah, one of my best friends, like literally that's all she does is like on the weekend, if I ask her what she's doing, she's thrifting. And Toronto has a very good thrift scene if you ever want to come to Canada and see it. But yeah, no, there's so many, but like what I've just loved is, it's just like you can kind of go into a store and then like you walk out looking like everyone else kind of thing, versus you can go into a thrift store and it's like you can walk out with pieces that are like unique to you and your style, and then also how are you going to style those pieces and stuff like that. So she's definitely converted me.
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, I guess there are some trends that I like. Like, for example, the black and white Nike Air Dunks.
Mm-hmm.
I love those.
Yeah.
But my friends are like, those are so basic. But I'm like, who cares? I think they're cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And have you grown each year since you started it, like in terms of, I guess, revenue?
Yeah, I have. Not just revenue, but like as a person too, like
Yeah, the off balance sheets growth too. Yes.
But yeah, I have.
Yes.
Could you, so one thing I'm curious about, it sounds like you've done a lot of like trial and error with these e-commerce providers. Could you maybe, for people who are thinking about starting something, like just like what platforms did you find worked for you? Were there like things that, like you mentioned, I think eBay was too complicated. You're currently using Depop. You tried Shopify. I can imagine a lot of this like changes your whole branding strategy. Like on Shopify, it's much more like you're managing things, whereas Depop, it's like the customers maybe are coming through their search experience. Like what did you find worked for you as a small business owner?
I would say definitely finding, I just found it more profitable to use a platform that was already well known, because it drives traffic, and then once you have a name there, you can start navigating that traffic to your own website. Because, I said before that I started my Shopify, and I mean, it was hard to get traffic, and so that's why I started Depop. And then I just kind of liked Depop, it was so user friendly. And I would say that's a good one. But I mean, it's different because not everybody's starting, a retail store. Or I guess another one, I mean, this is kind of just random, but like car rentals, you can use like Turo. What is it called? Turo. So that's
Turo.
Yeah, that's kind of like the point that I'm trying to make, like finding those apps. There's a lot of them.
And how do you handle shipping?
How do I handle it? Like,
Yeah, like I guess what service do you use? Do you get discounts? Because I mean, imagine that's got to be like one of your highest costs because you're shipping products all the time.
well, there's been a lot of different platforms that I used. Through Depop, it's just already on there, so I didn't have to worry about it. But now that I'm starting to go back to Shopify, I found, I mean, I'm kind of giving away my secrets here, but like Shippo's a good one to give you better rates, and Pirate Ship, that's a good one. So yeah, those are some of like the examples that I could give on shipping. It's actually pretty easy.
Yeah.
That's easy for me to say. Okay.
Yeah. And you had mentioned when you started that you are opening a retail location. So what prompted that? What made you, because that's obviously a big change. You're going from e-commerce where you presumably have no fixed expenses that are hitting you. So like if it's a down month, you're not, back against the wall having to, pay a lease or anything like that. But you obviously see that there'd be some benefit to having this location. So what, I guess, was the motivation behind opening up a storefront?
So, okay, this is actually new. Like I did this like a week ago. This is
okay. Breaking news.
breaking news, guys.
Yes.
This is something that I just did randomly. I always had this image in my head that I wanted, a brick and mortar store in the future when I'm like 35 or something. Like I just always saw it in the future. And I came across, when I was looking for like homeware and stuff, I came across this one place, this one thrift store that I just like fell in love with. I was like, I want this, so I'm gonna make it happen. So it is just in my garage.
Okay.
Like that, I don't know how it's gonna go. I'm just kind of feeling it out. It might be temporary just because it is in my home. So I don't know. I found it kind of like a risky thing because it is kind of scary letting strangers into my garage, but I might just do it temporary, you know, just to see if like neighbors or something or like local people come by, you know. So that
Yeah.
was a motivator.
Yes, that's interesting. So I guess you didn't have to like, search for a retail location. It was just in your backyard. Yes. No, that is very cool. And the other thing is you've got a very curated and well done Instagram profile for your business. So did you have help with that, or was that something you always did yourself? Like, what was kind of the process of building that out?
I did it all myself. Like I definitely had input in the beginning. I wanted that feedback. The only other person that was helping me was my friend Rachel, the one that I started a podcast with. She was also my photographer, and she gave me some tips. I just really liked her, I guess you can say, her vibe, you know, like she is really good at taking pictures, and uh she just kind of she gave me that idea. It's like this app where you can post before you actually post on Instagram to look at your feed. Uh, and that's very different from the actual pictures. You know, I feel like the actual pictures are what make it like, you know, good. Uh, and so I also did do some courses for marketing that kind of helped me out to get more of a feel for what I wanted my Instagram to look like. It's definitely changing a lot. Uh, I have like less people now, and yeah, that I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. And was there anything you did specifically that you saw like a jump in followers, or was it just the consistent posting and you just slow and steady grew?
Uh, I did have a couple of well-known people post in my Thriftheads pieces, so that kind of made it go up a little bit.
And is that something you like paid them to do, or they just bought something and they did it on their own?
No, one of them I actually just sent them items, and I didn't think that they were gonna see it, honestly. I just kind of did it, and they wore it. You know, I saw it in one of their YouTube videos, and they posted a picture in it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. So
Oh,
I
that's interesting. So what prompted you to send something for free? Because that is a trend that we have seen across guests, is that they often got a jump in business by doing work for free. So was that something that you were regularly doing, or was this kind of just like a one-off thing?
that one just ended up being, well, I did it twice, but that first one, it was more of just random. I do a lot of what I feel, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I see other brands and I'm like, how come they have, you know, like famous people on their page? You know, how do I do that? And so that was just one of the ways to do it. I'm like, okay, you know, I guess sometimes you gotta stop being afraid of losing money, you know, like you just gotta go for it because it's gonna like come back to you anyways. So, yeah.
So what I'm hearing, there's like a common thread of you sort of like following your intuition. Um, like you mentioned, not being afraid to lose money. Like you're in many ways like doing these things for, on the surface, if you were to tell someone else, they might be like, well, that maybe doesn't make sense, or I'm not sure about this, but you just did it anyways because you believed in it. Do you have any advice for people who maybe have ideas and how to like, for example, what I'm hearing is it sounds like a lot of trial and error. You're following your intuition, what you're enjoying. Once that starts to get some traction, then you invest a bit more into it, and then you sort of follow that trail rather than try to plan everything out. Just curious, like what's your advice to people who are maybe like still at that idea stage? Like how do you get through to something that becomes a reality?
I would say perfection will never matter the way consistency does. And, the only real way to fail at something is to stop showing up or just not even starting at all. So, I mean, it depends on the person too. Sometimes it can be scary. Like, believe me, I'm scared all the time. I was scared to come on this podcast, but I'm here. Like it's just sometimes like fear is just this illusion and it stops us from like reaching the person that we're supposed to be, and so also I had the privilege of working with seniors, and a lot of them wished that they had tried things, more things. And these were people that couldn't even get out of bed or take care of themselves. And so when you see that, I think that's why it's so like easy, or I shouldn't say it's easy, but it's just a little bit more,
Yeah, perspective.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I could go on, but that's really the point that I'm trying to make of sometimes you gotta get out of your head,
Just go for it. No, that's great advice. I think that's a really good place to end the interview. So I guess last thing we want to do is give people a chance to find you. So what's the easiest place to find your business?
So you can follow Thriftheads Arizona on Instagram, and you can check out our Depop at thriftheadsaz_, and our website, thriftheadsarizona.com.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sabrina. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, your journey was really cool. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.